Warm greetings, everyone. On behalf of W4W Foundation, a think tank instituted as Citizens Collective, we welcome you to another session of Wednesdays for Water. The conversation today is part of the International Association of the Study of the Commons, which we call at IASC Asia series. And we are talking about reframing Nepal's water debate around climate reality. Before we get into the session, the objective of Wednesdays for Water is to engage in conversation with water experts, grassroots practitioners, policymakers, and youth to explore the complex intertwined issues associated with water and the possible solutions they are working on and seeking for. Wednesdays for Water has become a signature series for W4W to the extent that people think that W4W stands for Wednesdays for Water. It does, but actually the foundation is registered as W4W, where it means V for water, walk for water, worry for water, wisdom for water, wins for water, and many more Ws, bringing it to 11 Ws, making it for water. In here, we actually mean conversations. We believe strongly that water conversations are crucial for water conservation. With the success of W4W's Wednesdays for Water series, we are actually hosting Friday Waters, which has 5 different sessions on Friday Water Arts, Friday Water Talkies, Friday Water Thesis Club, Friday Water Book Reading, and Meet a Maestro when we get a jackpot of some legend talking to us. In addition, on Monday, we are acknowledging and appreciating the work of women in the water sector through the series called Monday Munching and Musing with Women for Water. Do join us in our water conversations. If you are a water person, if you are enthusiastic, you have some story to tell us, reach out to us at www.w4w.in. All our past sessions are there as an online repository and open access. We are actually over 400 sessions old, making us the longest water conversation ever taken place in the world. In the area. We are usually focusing on Indian matters, and last 1 year we have started talking about Asian situations. So we pick one session from Asia, somewhere Asia every month, and that is part of the International Association of the Study of Commons Asia. I highly recommend you to join this group, which was started and led by Nobel laureate Elinor Ostrom. And this session today is going to be part of the World Commons Week, which is going to be held online next December, first week. More information will flow about that, but it is going to be screened on that platform as well, where common scholars from around the world can actually gain some insights about what's going on in Nepal. Before we get into our speakers talking to us, I am very grateful to Dr. Devesh Belbese, who is also our past speaker. So welcome back, Devesh, to come back to W4W to speak with us. And also I'm grateful to him that he actually volunteered to host this session to take charge and talking about Nepal's water debate around climate change and climate reality, as he calls it. To speak with him, we have Dr. Dipak Gyawali and Professor Vishnu Prasad Pandey, and we are really grateful to both of them from W4W. And I will hand it over to Devesh to take charge of rest of the session, and I'll come back only at the end of the session to announce for further sessions. Over to you, Devesh, and thank you so much for organizing this session. I'm not hearing you.
Thank you, Manshik. Can you hear me now?
Now I hear you. Go ahead.
Yes.
Two, right?
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, okay, perfect.
No, it disappeared.
So it's here now, right?
Yeah, now it's there.
Yeah. So I'm just going to give a brief context before we delve into today's conversation. It's a no-brainer to say water sort of defines Nepal's story. Everything we have aspired to become, in development terms, our hydropower ambitions, our food self-sufficiency, our dreams of achieving those tourism, being a high-end tourist destination, having industries, all sort of emanates from the idea of water. It sort of shapes our geography, our economy, our politics, And yet, for decades, what we have done is treated water as some sort of an endless resources and not a system that is under stress. Today, the story is changing further. Our glaciers are melting faster than the model sediment loads are shifting the entire ecosystem.
I am not hearing you now, Devesh.
Hello? Yeah.
Yes, now we hear
Can
you.
you hear me now?
Now we hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, this. Yeah. So our droughts have
I think Devesh is facing some problem. So
average condition. There's no.
Devesh, your voice is breaking too much. Huh?
So at COP27, for the first time, water was acknowledged in the official climate decision text. We all thought that was a breakthrough moment. Water was not just seen as a victim of climate change, but rather as a bridge for adaptation and resilience. Nepal, where every climate risk is a water risk, should have stood at the center of global conversation, but soon that momentum faded. Water disappeared again from mainstream dialogues, and it was absent in plans. The world, we know it just went back to counting carbons and forgot that planet's thermometer runs on water. So today I begin this dialogue. I invite us to look beyond the question of how to develop water and instead ask who truly governs Nepal's water and what happens when climate change starts governing them all. So, to unpack these ideas further, we are joined by two voices who have shaped how Nepal thinks about water. Both have worked across research, policy, and practice, and both have questioned the uncomfortable assumptions that often guide our institutions. Welcome to Pragya Dipak Gyawali. He is also the chair of Independent Disciplinary Analyst, and he served previously as Minister of Water Resources for Nepal, where he pioneered community electricity and participatory irrigation management. He's also a long-time scholar for water, probably the first in Nepal to challenge the norm that water is an engineering problem or economic problem alone, but rather he brought forward the idea that water probably is a social contract shaped by culture, power, people, and institutions. Similarly, we have Professor Vishnu Pandey, who is a professor of water resources at Department of Civil Engineering, Pulchok campus, IOE. Uh, he is also he also serves as the executive director for Center of International Relations at the same university and serves as adjunct professor at UNU Flores, Germany. Professor Vishnu is an academic and practitioner and has spent years building bridges between science and policy, translating data, risk, and institutional realities into actionable framework for water management. Together, they bring rare depth, one who is rooted in scientific inquiry and institutional reform, the other in political realism and cultural critique, creating a dialogue that moves between evidence and experience, between what we have built and what we must rebuild again. So, to begin our conversation, I'd like to put forward a question, a general question. Uh, that is, if climate is already reshaping power, knowledge, and timing, then who truly governs Nepal's water today? I would like to start with Professor Pandey to come from a very technical answer to this question.
Thank you, Deves. Thank you so much for this opportunity. With the interest of time, let me go directly to the questions. Under the broad question from technical side, I could see that maybe uh, climate change, disasters, uncertainty, and water decision. These are the four things maybe we talk quite often, and they are closely linked with the governance. Sometimes we ourselves get confused that governance is a soft-term approach, but actually not. Governance is informed by the technical data, information, and analysis. So technical and the other non-technical aspects together, it forms a better governance. So when we talk about climate change and other things, if we try to see the recent disasters in Nepal, be in Melamchi debris flow in 2021, subsequent Thane flood, 2024 extreme rainfall, and recent rainfall in 2025 with more than 300 millimeter of rainfall within Kathmandu in 24 hours, and the last year's record-breaking rainfall of 624 millimeter in the far western part of the country in Kanchanpur district. These all triggered a discussion that they all are linked to climate change with the academician, with the practitioners, and with the journalists too. But here the question is, we should be very careful about the attribution. Not all the disasters may be attributed to climate change. So attribution science should really should come into play. They may be linked to climate change, but attribution should be done carefully to have a certainty to inform the water decisions. Second point I would like to make is, the uncertainty can come from many angles. For example, projecting the future climate might have uncertainty with the global climate models. Translating that into the impacts with the various models, be it in water itself or food security, energy security, again have uncertainties. Similarly, maybe the data we use for the climate impact model development, quality of data have uncertainty. Again, with the results, interpretation capability has uncertainty. So with wide range of uncertainty, it may not be appropriate to report the climate change impacts as an absolute value or a single number to inform water decisions. Rather, we should report as a range of the values so that decision maker who are spending every dollars can visualize that, okay, with every incremental increase in investment in the dollar, what is a calculated risk they are going to take it. So this kind of reporting of the climate change impacts should be considered appropriately to have informed water decisions. Third dimension I could see is in many water infrastructures impacted by disasters or likely to be impacted by disaster or built in the disaster prone areas are built with the concept of the design flaw. Those who are from engineering background, we understand it quite well. The design flaw is built on the probability theories. If there are, let's say, a couple of cases of very extreme fraud, for example, one year is getting 500 times higher fraud than the most of the years, or other year is getting 10,000, but most of the 10,000, 10 times higher. But most of the years are getting normal fluctuation. Those two extreme events, I just mentioned out, may not be reflected well in the design fraud calculation. And in many times with the lack of human intelligence, we may even ignore them as an outlier. That has a significant impact on the design and resilience of the water infrastructure. If the climate dimension here comes into play, that whatever the water decision we make, our approach for designing the water infrastructure should change. Maybe design concept of design flood and calculation approach might need to change in the climate change context. And the last point I would like to highlight in response to these questions is, responses immediately after any disaster event. For example, there was an extreme drought event in the Madhya province in this year, and subsequently followed by a flood event. In both the cases, the way we respond immediately is very random. For example, with the immediate drought, with the extreme drought, there was a many call, okay, we will give this much n number of the hand pumps. Another set of minister or the group, okay, this much number of the deep wells. In the flood also, we'll give, let's say, 1 kilometer or 500 meter of the embankment will be built with this much number of cabin walls. This is the way we are providing a kind of response if the aftermath of the disaster. We talk a lot about the holistic approach. We talk a lot about resilience and adaptive capacity, but with this kind of responses, which might have linked to the political interest, which might have linked to economic access or access capacity in making water decisions, are not based on science. Those things need to be discouraged. So putting all them together to the questions about water governance, technical dimensions play a key role, whether the projecting climate or climate change impacts and disaster and associated uncertainty with them. If we can quantify appropriately with a high level of certainty, they are likely to have a big impact, positive impact in water decision making. Thank you. Over to you, Deves.
Thank you, Professor Vishnu. We'll definitely come back to some of the points you've talked, but before that, I'd like to request Mr. Dipak Gyawali to please elaborate and come from a more political, institutional, social perspective.
Okay, let me begin by saying that climate change entered the public debate in
sides of
Nepal
things.
less than about,
Yeah.
you can hear me, right? Yeah.
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Less than about 3 decades ago. Okay. Which is 10 years after I started studying climate change in Berkeley way back in the 1980s. Okay. And let me say that what I see does not make me very happy. And the reasons are mostly the Vishnuji highlighted it, but he's very diplomatic about it. So it's because there's just too many institutional failures. Why? Let me tell you, Nepal is an extremely complex country ecologically. You know, between the Tarai to the top of Mount Everest, in a span of about 150 to 200 kilometers, we have every climatic zone of the world, from tropic, subtropic, all the way to the Arctic. Okay, which means climate change is affecting each one of these areas very, very differently. Okay, now Deves mentioned COP 27, which was the first COP that even acknowledged that climate problem is a water problem. Okay. Now, unfortunately, other COPs haven't done a damn thing about it, and it doesn't look like COP 30 is going to do anything either. Okay. Now, which points to the fact that much of the climate debate in Nepal, and I'm afraid in India too, in Nepal more salient, is determined by foreign aid. You know, it's not very much inborn, although there's a lot of effort now and a lot of groups and all are coming talking about climate. But it's come imported with foreign aid and also with the fashion tags that foreign aid industries come with. Okay, which means that it's fashionable to tag everything to climate change now. And my problem has been that much of the problems that we have with disasters, you know, water disasters, etc., climate change is exacerbating the problem, making it worse every year. But the base of the disasters, is not so much climate change as maldevelopment, which means we're doing bad development, overpumping groundwater, building bad mountain roads, causing landslides, destroying spring sources, you name it. Okay. And what has happened is, I'm afraid climate change, the way the narrative has developed, it's actually allowed policymakers to, you know, sidestep maldevelopment and blame everything on climate change, which means they are, you know, well and fine, you know, oh, it's not us to blame, it's climate change. Sorry, it's your maldevelopment that has brought about much of the disaster that climate change is making worse. Okay, so that's my first problem. The second is that many of the uncertainties, you know, that we have around hydro, once climate change is defined as a water problem, it affects every kind of water, you know, from soil moisture to rainfall to groundwater to blue water, rivers, everything is affected. The trouble is, we still consider Nepal as being rich in water resources. I don't know how, even though we have four months of flood and 8 months of drought. Okay? And the assumption is that, you know, water is free, groundwater is free. You know, rivers are always going to be there. We can, you know, draw as much as we want out of these bodies and dump all our sewer there, making them basically, well, Yamuna in Delhi and Bagmati in Kathmandu are right now essentially sewers. Okay. So, in a sense, what needs to be studied has also not been studied. I'll give you one more example, and I'll probably end with that. Too much of the disaster aspects of water, you know, including climate change now, are treated more as a construction industry thing, you know, build, like Mr. G said, you know, build an embankment, you know, distribute free pumps during drought and all, making things even worse. It's mostly about construction, equipment import, and really nobody is bothered about the longer consequence. So, you know, for example, you know, glacial lake outburst. This is so sexy. Everybody talks about it, you know. But, you know, glacial lakes can be mapped. You know where they are. You can go and study them. The real problem is coming with a Nepali word for that disaster, which we have been talking about, Dr. Professor Jayanta Bandyopadhyay of Calcutta and myself, since the early 90s. The word is Bishyari. It's a Nepali word which means a landslide dammed lake, not a glacial lake. It's in the mid hills where there's no snow. A part of the mountain just slips into the river, creates a temporary dam, and that overtops, and then there's devastation for about 15 to 20 kilometers down below. Okay. Now, this is the major form of disaster. Globs are secondary to that because people live in the middle hills where this happens. Okay. Unfortunately, there's no study of these. Also, these are being exacerbated by permafrost melting. There's absolutely no study of that. Forget studies, there's not even an acknowledgement of these things. So again, to cut a long story short, there is tremendous institutional failure in handling disasters the way we do, and climate change is just going to make it worse, and I don't see an easy light at the end of the tunnel. I'll end with that right now.
Thank you. Thank you, Pragya Deepak. Yeah, we talk about we established that we are already suffering from maldevelopment. Master plans, yet climate change refuses to stay within our plans if we have any. It changes the ground under our feet. So, in a world where uncertainty has become permanent, how can we stop reacting and start learning? Professor Vishnu just mentioned, Nepali institutions, most of our structures are designed for averages for normal year that no longer exist anymore. So perhaps the question isn't how we control the system, but how can we build one that listens, learns, and adapts as conditions change? So, what does success look like given the new reality under climate change? So, let me again ask Professor Vishnu, and then we'll come back to Pragya Deepak.
Thank you. Success is, in my opinion, is a relative term, right? So, if we talk a bit more, with the climate change, the water targets are changing. They are not static. So it's a changing goalpost kind of things. With that, success is a very relative thing. In my opinion, there are a couple of things I think that can lead to the success. One is, for success, we need to be able to quantify what exactly the climate change impact is with a high level of certainty. It requires the increased monitoring capacity, especially in our context, Hydromet agencies, Department of Hydrology and Meteorology. We are struggling hard to get the quality data in many instances with the both spatial and temporal coverage. So we need to increase that capacity more to increase our kind of prediction or impact assessment capacity. Second thing is adaptive design guidelines for infrastructures. Like I mentioned, the target are changing, and this year's maybe we may set one set of the extremes, but other years it might change already. So our design guidelines should be adaptive, reviewed timely, very frequently compared to the past, so that we will be able to address the uncertainties relatively well. A third thing I could see is that the climate change kind of stuff we have in Nepal from government side is it is a climate change division within the Ministry of Forest and Environment is looking after all the climate change related things. It might have been true. It was true initially because climate change came as an environmental agenda. But now it's beyond that, much more beyond that. It's an agenda for water security, energy security, economy, development, and so forth. So in this context, if we want to really address climate change in a long run, I think there is a strategic shift is required. That division looking after climate should be associated with some development ministries. For example, it could be like WEX, Water Energy Commission Secretariat, as an umbrella organization, or within the linking more with the water, like Devesh mentioned initially, to really address the issue of water crisis as a climate crisis and vice versa, we may need to consider putting this within the Ministry of Energy and Water Resources so that they will be able to align well all the investment decisions with the climate resilience kind of things. Therefore, just to sum them up, we may need, while answering your question about what the success look like, those all these technical things and the policy level changes, if we can make on timely manner, it may lead to success. Another thing is, our risk in the future are not necessarily the trend of the past. So they are much beyond that. For example, we haven't seen that issues related to permafrost thawing so far. In next 3 or 4 decades of time, thawing of permafrost and associated exacerbation in landslide, sedimentary, the flood, and so on are expected to be significantly higher. So investment is required in monitoring permafrost, high altitude monitoring, and so on. If that is the case, it may help to reduce the risks, and perhaps the success may lead in that way. Perhaps I can stop here for the time being. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to pose the same question to Pragya, Dipak.
Yeah. Vishnuji has outlined the gist of the problem. Let me take that a step forward, from a slightly political economic lens. Okay. First of all, the idea of governing uncertainty, which you have put in your title here, it's a bit too hubristic, It's too, shall I say, ambitious or hubristic, because uncertainty, the attributes of uncertainty are tied to risk. And what we say is risk is socially constructed. Now, there's a big problem of what's called lay expert divide on risk. Experts tell us that the risk of a nuclear power plant exploding is 0.000, whatever it is, and nobody believes them. Okay. And nobody wants a nuclear power plant next in the backyard. Okay. Now, this has forced people who do the sociology of technology to begin to look at these issues and then come to the conclusion that risk is, first of all, socially constructed. Yeah, there is a technical side to risk, a technical assessment of what risk might be, the mathematics of it, that's all there. That's for the experts, okay? But risk overall is socially constructed, and it is constructed in 4 very specific ways. Market folks are not afraid of risk. They are risk takers. In fact, most people who make money in the market do it by taking risk in areas of high uncertainty. If you look at some of the biggest billionaires in the world, they make most of their money during war. Okay. Let's be clear about that. Okay. So it's a risk is not what we as researchers, academics and all think, They are risk takers. In fact, they love risk. Okay. And uncertainty. Activists are risk avoiders. They are risk sensitizers. They also, abused for being risk amplifiers. Taking a small risk and blowing it out of proportion, say the market people or the governments, okay? But they are like canaries in a mine. They warn you early on that things that governments and market people have missed, okay? And you have governments who want to manage. Now, this governing thing only comes in the bureaucratic hierarchism of governments, Sorry, that where they manage things so that things don't go out of control. That's their basic philosophy. Unfortunately, you have another category here, which is called the which is called the risk. The people who cope. I'm sorry, in the early stages of a cold. Thank God this is not face to face. We've got a computer screen mask in front of us. Okay, these are risk avoiders, risk copers. They cope with the risk of everybody else's agenda, the government's agenda, the market's agenda, and the activist agenda. And what they do is they basically saying, I don't know, I just cope with whatever is around, And these are your average voters and average consumers. Okay. So when it comes to disaster and things like that, all these 4 types of risk management styles come into play. And no one is wholly right, but no one is wholly wrong either. Which basically means that when we deal with risk, what we need to do is what is called risk portfolio diversification. Now, most governments, most of our engineering studies and all are geared around this idea of optimization of one, finding this one perfect solution. We have to accept that under climate change uncertainties and the hydrological uncertainties that come with it, the meteorological uncertainties that come with it, there is no one optimal solution. It's something that I call many 10% solutions, which is, instead of building one perfect, economically most sound, huge, large dam on one river, spread that out in 20 different rivers. Floods don't happen in every river at the same time in every year. So if one dam bursts, it's only a small 10% that goes, not the entire dam that gets washed out. Okay. So we are being forced by climate change uncertainties to opt for this many 10% solutions, which brings me to this final point, which is that, we need to take climate change and development right down to the lowest unit of governance. Yes, we need national governments and international agencies and all doing the high science and telling us this, that, the kind of things that needs to be done. But the actual implementation of all that and decision making must come to the local level, because as I argued, before, we have every climatic zone in the world within 100, 200-kilometer length. Okay. And they have very different problems about water, about disaster, about food production, kind of food that will grow in the plains will not grow in the mountains, etc., etc. Okay. So if you take that to the lowest level of governance with guidance and some monitoring from the national level, that's fine. Then they will take decisions that increases their resilience. Okay. So this is where I think climate change is failing to find traction at the lowest level. And we just have too much, and Vishnuji mentioned that, it's been made into a forest department fiefdom. Okay, I'm sorry to use that word. It's a big fiefdom, and there are these big zamindars sitting in the environment ministry who think that climate is their baby and nobody should interfere in there. So who goes to the COP meetings and all are really fought out at that ministerial kind of level, forgetting that all the action has to be taken at the village and the lowest unit of governance at municipalities and so on. Monitored, of course, by the national and sort of international and academic levels. So this is where I think we need that risk portfolio diversion if we are to do sensible coping with uncertainty. I'll end there.
Thank you so much, Pragya. Yes, Nepal has a very diverse topography in the sense that within a stretch of 100 kilometers, we have a flatland to the highest point in the world and all different climates from tropic to Arctic. Yet one geographical feature is on repeat all the time when we talk about climate, and it's called the mountain agenda. And it's quite critical because all our water or our rivers begin there, and so does all our risks. The mountains regulate flow, store glaciers, generate sediments. But when we talk about mountain agenda today, it still sounds like a theme for a conference. But rather than the very fundamental of Nepal's survival. So perhaps the real challenge at this moment is, how do we define mountain agenda? What are some of the risks that are very real to Nepal when we talk about mountain agenda, and how much of it has been reflected in our national policy or our actions? Uh, Recently we even had a big conference, a regional conference called Sagarmatha Sambad in Nepal, and water barely made any topic during the Sambad. So in that situation, how much are we talking about mountain agenda? What mountain agenda really is, and how much of it
Okay.
The base is breaking. Yeah.
translated to our actions? So let's
maybe we invite you to speak, Professor Vishnu. We can start.
Yeah,
All right.
Professor.
Thank you. It's regarding mountain agenda and how is it reflected and what does it mean in terms of risk governance and something like that. Thank you. The mountain agenda has been in the limelight for the last, I think, couple of years. It's a relatively recent, I would say. It becomes an agenda in all the international forums, national forums, sorry, and the topics for academic discussion too. In the recent Sagarmatha Samma too, it got an attention, of course. What confuses me is it looks like a good for getting attention globally, but what exactly the agenda is not clear, in fact. What exactly, because it's a mountain agenda, looks good, but what exactly the agenda is, I think, not yet elaborated. In my understanding, perhaps it could be showcasing that mountain means it's a complexity, so we need a lot of investment or emphasis on research and development activities to make a sustainable development. Other dimension could be mountain is too complex, and maybe addressing by a single agency or single country is not possible, so we need a joint hand collaboratively by multiple nations together. It may be the call for that one. Third thing, it could be like with the climate change, the mountain being a resource of water and associated resource or ecosystem resources for a large majority of population downstream. So conserving it means a lot in terms of the security of people, ecosystem, and so on. So all these three, four dimensions could be associated mountain agenda, I believe. So addressing the in terms of reflection on national policies, this agenda is relatively recent. Most of the recent policies try to highlight this agenda in this or that way, but without much elaboration. So this is where we could see the need for unpacking what the mountain agenda means in terms of translating into programs and activities. Second thing is, like I mentioned, is a complexity associated with the many risks, which are difficult to understand with a relatively straightforward way. So we need to invest on monitoring, understanding, forecasting, and need to a kind of collaboration in terms of knowledge and technology. So that's way we can understand more and we can reduce them more. Also, mountain, when we talk about the mountain, it's a source of majority of the resources, like I mentioned, but they are far away from the communities. They are far away from the infrastructures, I mean, the source. They are far away from the farmlands. So sometimes they are getting less emphasis in terms of action, though talked a lot in terms of the forums. So this kind of gap needs to be closed by appropriate actions to address those complexity. And finally, Nepal has a signatory of the Paris Agreement, and also the commitment to the targets associated with that has prepared the LAPA and NAPA and so on, Local Adaptation Plan of Action and National Adaptation Program for Actions, some time back. So implementing all the 9 priority sectors and I think 64 priority action areas needs a lot of huge investment. It's estimated is a few years back is $2 billion US dollar annual investment is required to achieve all the activities outlined in the NAPA. The question is, we can make a document, that's fine. Government has made that as official document, that's fine. But how do we really generate the investment? That's a big question. So maybe to translate mountain agenda into reality, if we try to link that to our NAPA, LAPA, and the associated government's program and priorities, and help to raise the fund, or maybe global climate finance, but used in a way that is prioritized by the government, it may make a more sensible, make more sense in terms of translating policy or maybe discussions or science into action. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Vishnu. I'm sorry I'm having a lot of internet issues. I understand my voice is breaking out a lot. So without further
Yeah, let me take up this. Now it's interesting. This
I would ask Pragya Dipak to elaborate on this point.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Interesting, but I look at these efforts, with a bit of skepticism, and alarmed skepticism, we might call it. The reason is it's propagated like tourism development, it's more like hype for, oh, mountains, we have mountains, therefore we should have this. And It's nice. Mountains are a very complex ecosystem and affected very differently. Like island states are affected by climate change in a very different way. The mountains are also going to be affected in very, very different complex ways. Okay, that's all given. There's no doubt about it. Okay. However, when I look at these official Lapazan, Napazan, nationally determined contribution and all, in the age of Trump, I am afraid I shudder. I shudder. Because the assumptions behind these LAPAs and NAPAs and in nationally determined contribution is, okay, we need these billions and billions of dollars to get anything done. We can only do about 5 or 10%, and the rest has to come as money from outside. That there's an underlying basic assumption behind it. Okay, now with loss and damage fund and this fund and that fund, I'm afraid climate change is a far more serious thing, and our planning has to really be not dependent on how much money comes from outside. Nothing is coming outside. Look at what Glasgow promised. Nothing came out of that. From Paris promises, Glasgow promises, none of that money is coming. And the reason for that has to be is that much of the advanced industrial economies are in deep trouble, economic trouble. I mean, there's a recession looming. You don't know what's going to happen with the Trump tariff wars and and all this sort of stuff. Okay, so the assumption that money is going to come as before in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s with development aid and all that, it's out of the window. It's gone. Okay, we have to start our planning with the basic idea that climate change is real, it's going to happen, and there is no foreign money coming in. Okay, how do we now go about doing what needs to be done with our own resources? If some foreign money comes, good, let's take it as a lottery win. But let's not bank on the idea that foreign money alone is going to come and solve this problem. The other problem I have with this mountain agenda or napas or lapas or whatever you call them, is that the reality in the mountains, and this is not just Nepal, it's true in Bhutan, of all the places I found out recently, Sikkim, Uttarakhand, mountains are emptying. And they're emptying because there is no real mountain friendly economic development going on there. People have nothing to do. They can't survive there. Their springs are drying. They can't grow produce there that can sell in the market. And so on and so forth. So what's the best thing to do? The young people are all moving out into cities, going to the Gulf or wherever it is to earn a living. And entire mountain economy, agriculture is in tremendous decline. The young people are not there. It's dependent. It's a totally remittance economy. 30% of Nepal's GDP comes from remittances. Good Lord, okay? So what is happening is we are now going into a stage where even garlic and coriander, dhania is being imported for a predominantly agricultural country. Okay, so this is where the mountain agenda is. Now, look at the other side of development. Currently, one big achievement touted by the government is that we have made electricity access to 98.5% of the people, which means practically 100% of Nepal is electrified in the villages. You go to the villages and ask questions there, and they'll tell you that there's nobody to turn on the switch. Yes, electricity has come, but there's nobody to turn on the lights because people are not living there anymore. You know, there's no industry that's going to cottage industry or village industry that's going to be using this electricity and all. So essentially, what we need to do is that we need to begin to redefine development. Together, not just nationally but also globally, in light of climate change. We have to completely redefine it and say this old 50, 60-year-old pathway of development is not working, will not work, and it needs redefining, and it needs redefining from grassroots upwards. And that's not happening, which is where we are going to be in deep trouble with climate change coming down the road. I'll end with that.
Thank you, Pragya Dipak. Yeah, to me, I mean, I think the final takeaway, I think Pragya, Deepak, and I need to meet halfway. Maybe it's just a young blood in me that looks for more optimistic solutions and more actionable plans. And maybe I'm yet too young to fight the system and realize that everything at the end of the day is a bit pessimistic, or you need to be more critical or look through a more skeptical angle. But for a while, let's meet halfway and then talk about one particular thing. what should be done? What could be done? What could be those 3 pointers or 4 pointers that Nepal could address, to quote some of those Miss Nepal questions, where they ask, if you were the prime minister, what would you do? So I would like to ask both the speakers the same
Okay, I'm going to take it over again and
question.
maybe
So if you
invite
were
both
the
of you.
leader, what could be those 3 pointers that you would do?
Yes. Maybe we go first with Vishnu again, as we have been doing. Vishnu, over to you. We
Yeah,
are
what
optimistically looking for some solutions or some ideas on where to really put our energy.
Okay, let me talk from technical angle, and maybe Gyawali will talk from the, I think, governance angle. That's what he's more expertise has. From technical angle, I think I have a clear idea. I put in the chat box also exact the similar answer to the similar questions. I think everything starts with the quantification, with the high level of certainty associated with that. So once we are able to quantify and translate that into the actions with the timely actions like NAPA, LAPA, or there could be any other kind of actions, but in real sense, which can address the problem. And also the provision for periodic evaluation, pause and reflect kind of things, so that it has an adaptive governance. If the things are not moving, there is a flexibility to change it and change the course of the action, like reimagine governance. If we have that kind of mechanism, I think that we need to go in that line. And more importantly, with all these things, unless it is translated into economic terms, ultimately decision makers are not the technical personnel. So to make it understood from the larger broad eye perspective, we need to translate all those impacts and the associated actions, and yes, cost and benefit kind of things in economics term. So ultimately, from moving from technical to climate economics could be the way forward. Quantifying for each basin, each river system, each kind of social groups and associated heterogeneity, we are able to translate those technical dimension to economic from through climate economics lens. Maybe the other step like institutional reform, policy reforms, and those sort of things will make a good sense in the next stage. Uh, that's the input from my side, and over to Pragya Gyawali.
That's a very good input to even young people to find out how, where, and what areas they can work on. So actually, public policy becomes a very important space where students should really enroll and find out how they can cling on to climate issues. Yes, Deepak sir?
Yeah, my 3 points would be, actually to the three social solidarities that I talk about, just talked about, One is to government, in Nepal's case at least, get it out of this, one ministry bureaucracy to something like Water and Energy Commission, which has got what, 12 secretaries of different ministries there, in the board, from finance and foreign affairs to forest and energy and irrigation and you name everyone. Okay, so at least that's a body that is cross-cutting across government departments, which is what climate change and water are also cross-cutting. Okay, so that would be one great help if water disasters and climate change were moved to WEX and made more active there. Okay, the second is actually, to the market folks, that the chambers of commerce and the tourism associations and others, there's some, they wish desperately wanted something positive. Let me give you a very positive example from Nepal. One positive thing which has great climate implication is the growth of, you'd be surprised, ethnic restaurants in Nepal. We didn't have that 20 years ago. It was standard, people are trying to cater to American and European tourists, a hamburger and God knows what else. That was, Western food and all that. Suddenly somebody realized that, when Europeans and Americans, they come trekking into Nepal, they're not really looking for the first McDonald's or something like that. They would like to try local food. So they picked up the Thakalis from Mustang being the first ones, I think, and the Newars of Kathmandu with the Newar kitchen, Now we have 124 ethnic groups and 103 languages. Okay? And these are across these ecological zones where very different things grow. So with the growth of ethnic restaurants, what has happened is there's a tremendous demand for things like finger millet, and all these other products. Mr. Modi in India has started also this millet thing. It's a dryland crop, doesn't use too much water. It's highly nutritious. And ethnic food was dependent on these very, very local, vegetables and local, dryland crops and things like that. So now, because of the growth of ethnic restaurants, there's a tremendous demand for these ethnic crops, which were dying before. Now people are rushing out to, grow millet and, sell at high price to all these tourist restaurants and all. So in a sense, if the market were properly taxed, properly incentivized with, the things, they could go for resilient kind of farming that is ecologically sane and sensible. Not everybody has to use white sugar and, white bread. Okay. We can go for other things. Okay. And the third one, and this is the most important, the activist community. You see, the 1980s and 1990s was when there was the best climate and water and, clean air activism, not just in Nepal, but also in India and globally. 21st century has been a disaster because most activists have been tamed, and nowhere have they been tamed and domesticated more than in the climate field. All they're doing is just parroting, what the IPCCs and COPs have said, without actually having a very robust climate agenda that challenges both what the market is doing and what the governments are doing. So that we have not seen. So if we see that more activism coming with, very creative things like these ethnic restaurants and things like that, for instance, we would then be much better off dealing with climate change and water-related disasters that come with it.
Okay. Thank you so much, both Vishnu and Deepak, for really answering these tough questions asked by Devesh, and importantly, Devesh representing the young minds of tomorrow and also today, who are not only affected but also really are looking for solutions which they can participate and they can join hands with. And this is a good time to also open the floor, because at Wednesdays for Water, we are really appreciating our participants' participation. So I see some names, some interesting questions, and thanks Vishnu for replying to many of these questions on the chat box. But as a protocol and as also to encourage our participants, I will request participants to switch on their camera and share their viewpoints, even if they have written their points here and Vishnu has responded. So let me invite Somi Vattarai, if you can open your camera and speak your heart or whatever you would like to add here. It is not necessary that you have to ask question, but because your question has been responded very well by Vishnu, but I would still like to hear you out. We would like to hear you out.
Thank you very much. Greetings to everyone. Overall, the session was very forward-looking approach, so I love that, and I'm looking forward to more sessions. My questions has been answered, and thank you very much for that.
Okay, so please check, because Professor Vishnu has really given some elaborate ways how youth can join. So I was actually keen to know from which discipline Somi Bhattarai comes from, so that you also can please connect with us, and I will suggest everyone to keep looking at our websites and social media. As I mentioned that we are 400 sessions old, so we really have a good repository of not only professors and practitioners, but very vocal people. And that brings me to really invite our next person who has put some points here, Rakesh Regmi, if I am pronouncing your surname correctly, and if not, please pardon me for that, but request you to please come on board and share your thoughts. Rakesh, are you still around? I think in Nepal there is also issue of network at some places. We may get B, new Pane or Pain. I'm sorry because this name pronunciation is always going to be a catch. But given the fragmentation of decision making, are you still around, and would you like to engage with our speakers? Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much for inviting. And I think both the panelists are in fact excellent speakers, and then I've worked with them, so I can in fact say with full pride that I had a previous opportunity to at least do some sort of, tete-a-tete, with the two people. One of the things, that I always question myself is, many of these talk program, panel discussion, and even, government meetings end up with the same thing that, we have to do more on institutionalization of, water resources management and governance, or, we actually say that, there are certain things, but everybody knows about these problems, the solution, and of course, we know solutions as well. But for some reason, where is that, the speed bump, and perhaps, Mantriju, perhaps, you can in fact, say it, with full authority. Where is that little knot, that does not allow us to move from what happens in reality, and of course, jump with that, little speed bump that we have been experiencing for the last, God knows, how many decades now. So perhaps, you can say that what is that last mile, that we have failed to achieve?
Okay, sorry.
Or, to address, institutional fragmentation in the discussion that we're having.
Yeah.
Over to you. Thank you so much.
Can you please tell your name, announce your name, because I want to really have your name and surname correctly.
Banu Nupane. I
Nupane.
serve a World Water Assessment Program is something that
Okay.
Mr. Gyawali has in fact earlier contributed to. I serve as a process coordinator for that one, and in fact look forward to working with you. These days I serve.
So I already, thank you. I already see a speaker in you, so we will have a longer discussion, but you may have also read in the chat box, I am personally looking at climate crisis, water crisis as a manufactured and manipulated, which has been highly cemented by both our speakers and by the well-offs. So for me, it is more of a environmental and social injustice. Because who is affected by climate change? Who is affected by climate crisis or water crisis? It's the poor people. Still, the rich people are having the same, and it was elaborated very well by both the speakers that who is going to COP, we all know, and who is doing what. And I think one point I will raise here is that we really have to raise the bar of moral crisis from every one of us. As you rightly pointed out, we all have answers, but why are we not able to find solution? I disagree to some extent on that part, although we run with a moral crisis problem, because the magnanimity of the problem is so much that the small solutions here and there, they are not getting aggregated, and that is where I will actually like to answer the previous question to the youth, that the documentation and dissemination of the problem solving is not happening to the scale that at which it should happen. So in a sense, I give very simple example that do you look at disaster or do you look at the crisis, and how do you interlink, which was very well raised in the beginning also by Vishnu, by the way. And I think we are not utilizing the education for empathy, and instead the education is used for economy and employment more, even by the well-intended people, including, I will say, myself. So I'm really standing at that crossroad of morality more than climate. So I will keep it short like this, but Nupane, we have more talk to do on this matter, but there we are no short of solutions. It's just that, do we want to solve the crisis? Dipak made it very clear that, and even Vishnu made it very clear that rich people live or thrive with risks and disasters. We have to know that. So I think that is where I use a tagline. It is a man-made disaster, and I am also working on feminism. So I also say that it is actually a man-made, not a woman-made disaster. So to large extent, we'll talk about it. Let's take the next point here, and I invite you, Nupane, to join us as our speaker sometime. Santosh Adhikari has a very interesting point here. Santosh, if you are still around, we would like to hear your mind. Go ahead. We really want to appreciate all our participants and give them the time on screen, and let's see if they are around. Santosh, are you around? And I think again Vishnu has responded, but I don't see him here. So I'll go to the next one, and I also see a hand raised, but just allow me to take the chats first
Manpreet,
because it's
just
priority.
to put one point on Sanot Adhikari's question, though I
Yes,
there, I just want to put one more point that
sure.
may be interesting to all. So I could see the hand raised by Madhav Belvasi also. You may reach
Yes,
out
I
to
was
him
going there.
also.
Yeah.
See, of course, the decolonizing climate change sounds, climate science sounds good. As I mentioned, combining local traditional knowledge with the global climate knowledge and in appropriate way, in a contextualized way, could be a solution. In addition to that, behavior change is a good response to decolonizing climate science. If each of us can contribute something without thinking where does it fit into, even if it is not accounted for anywhere. If every one of us started to think in a way, by changing our behavior, many millions of solutions silently will contribute to a cumulative solution. That's what I would like to add here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe we hear Madhav, please unmute. Yeah, you are already unmuted. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Well, it was very interesting discussion. I think
Yeah,
it was very much enlightening also in many areas. There is no question from my side. Just would like to add some points.
sure. Go
Uh,
ahead.
yes, yeah. Firstly, regarding the due to the climate change, the uncertainty has increased, particularly the design flood. Uh, how to calculate the design flood has been a major challenge for the hydraulic structures or even the bridges. So road department has tried to, what they are trying to do is they have increased design flood, what the rational formula, whatever they use, or the other methods for calculating the design flood, what they have tried to do is increase the design flood by 15 to 20%. So they have already adopted this in their guidelines, design guidelines. The second point is, which I would like to mention is, I think they have, Vishnuji slightly tried to, state some points on it, but he has not clearly mentioned about it. The basin plan, which has been already prepared by WAKES, that is the main idea, for each basin, prepare a plan for future development, allocation of water, and disaster mitigation, social, economic, and environmental issues are to be addressed. So these points are not being talked about for the climate change resilience and so altogether management of water resources within the basin. Third point which I would like to raise is the design, the structures which already been constructed. The climate change, I mean, whether you believe or not, but the flood which is coming to, the floods which is occurring are definitely much larger than what we have designed our structures. Let me state, they give an example. Back in, I think, some 10 years ago, there was a flood in Babai River. The design flood is about 8,500 cumex, but the flood was 11,000. And fortunately, the upstream embankment was breached, and about 25% of the discharge was spilled out, and that discharge did not come to the structure, and the structure was saved. That gives a lesson that for the existing structure, we should provide some sort of fuse in the upstream, or some structures are to be provided to work as a fuse so that the main structures remain intact. So this sort of solution has not come into in the discussion. Third point which I would like to raise is a fourth point is ungauged rivers. Our major challenge, which I see in the federal context, is many hydraulic structures for the irrigation or hydropower, whatever it is, are being also constructed by the provinces. And these rivers are not being gauged. And the major challenge is how to estimate the design flood for those ungauged rivers. Of course, Department of Irrigation has tried to develop, the methods to estimate the floods for those ungauged stations, but these remains again uncertain. So some works are really needed for to estimate the ungauged stations, rivers, which are massively being used by the local government as well as provincial government.
Okay, we will keep it here. Yeah.
These are the points which I would like to just
Sure, thank you. Because if these points need to be elaborated, we really have to get one more session online here, which I am very much open about. If there are people, quite a good number of speakers who would like to pick up another session on Nepal, we are very happy to organize it. And on one another point, which I would like to disagree with Nupane is on that what are these conversations doing? Because at W4W, I strongly believe personally, this is my viewpoint, that the amount of water impact which we have, it is not equivalent to the amount of water literacy we have in a society. So because water is not taught, and whatever we know about water most of the time is either for our consumption or it is part of the negative impact we have from the water. And therefore, I strongly believe that having a water literacy will be extremely crucial for the entire society to even hold the people responsible for what is going on in the water sector. I mean, I have no two doubts about engaging in water conversation and making it everyday life thing. And the tagline for W4W is water conversation for water conservation, where we want to really make water everybody's business, as in the way we talk about sports, we talk about politics. Are we talking about water? And that is where we can start seeking accountability from people, and that is also where W4W's talk series are really taking shape. To respect both the speakers, I would really like to invite them for their last line, but please keep it as short as possible. Your final remarks on water conversation, or how the climate discourse can really become everyday life discussion, and so that we can hold people who are responsible more accountable than we are able to hold them together. I had a very different question, but I'm posing it to really make a point that these conversations are important. Otherwise, we are not heading even, there is a big wall between the affected people and those who are deciding for us. We will start with Dipak, and over to you.
Well, very quickly, I would say that as the age of globalization is ending with the age of Trump, okay, we are now entering a very different international relations period.
Yes.
With much more localization now. Make America great again, make in India, you name it, okay? So I think now climate change problem also has to be addressed more at the national and local level than expecting solutions from outside. It's not going to happen. USAID is closed, British Aid Agency is closed, DFID is closed. So, sorry, we do not know what this new international relation is going to be like. But I think bigger, much more intensive regional conversation, let's say around South Asia, Bangladesh, India, Nepal, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, around these issues, would allow us in our hydroecological zone, our very unique bioregional zone, to come forth with solutions that are more relevant to us, which might be relevant to the rest of the world also. So I'm strongly advocating much more localized
Absolutely.
action.
I so much agree with you. Climate change may be a global problem, but the solutions will always lies in the local hands, and that is why local discourse and discussions are extremely crucial. Vishnu, last few lines.
Thank you. The climate change, like we discussed, various dimensions, is a highly interdisciplinary science, and also the impacts and the people affected are widespread. So it should be looked from a highly interdisciplinary lens, one thing. Second thing is attribution to climate change should be done appropriately. Everything should not be attached to climate change unless we have a strong, clear evidence. And the third thing I would like to put on is solution should start from ourselves. We as an individual through behavior change. When cumulative effect of thousands or millions of those solutions would give a strong, sustainable, and resilient approach to the society and the nation at large. And that's what I would like to add on to whatever we have discussed so far. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Vishnu Pandey and Dipak Gyawali, sir, and of course, Devesh Balbase to really organize this session. Thank you so much for your wonderful insights. I really felt that you were speaking my heart. It was so much straight from the heart from you, both of you. And of course, Deepak's concerns were very, very genuine as a young, futuristic person. Before we close the session, I would like to inform you that this week we have a very interesting film, which is a Friday Water Talkies, and we talk about whatever. So this is a young couple who traveled across India and captured different landscape and talk about how water problems are different in different landscapes. Next week, our signature series, Wednesdays for Water, comes again with the similar issue on water anxiety series, and we talk about peace and ecology in the times of climate change. Information will be there in the chat box. It is also going to be available in our website www.w4w.in and all our social media channels, which are also shared with you in the chat box. And you can just simply Google W4W and you will find our over 400 sessions, conversations available to all of us. We strongly believe water conversations are crucial. All the chat box information will be with us. If you still want to be speaker on our platform, you can simply write to us or you can reach out to me whenever you think you are ready, or if you know someone who is really keen to share, we are very open to host sessions for them. Thank you so much, all of you, all the participants. We have touched more than 10,000 lives, I suppose, by now, and with over 600 speakers spoken on our platform. So conversations are here to stay until January end. We are fully booked, so which means conversations matter, and we shall continue. And I'm looking forward to more sessions from Nepal on different issues on water. Thank you so much, all of you. Please take care, and we see each other soon. Bye-bye.